Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me this evening or this morning, whenever you're listening to this. This is the very first LUA interview, the very first segment of the very beginning for a new Liberty Under Attack edition. This is the only place for sourced and documented truth and help from yours truly if you so desire. You are becoming a slave to the Federal Reserve, to the fear propagated by those in power. I hope to shed some light on that in this upcoming interview. So, guys, thank you for joining me this evening, this afternoon, wherever you are. I want to direct you guys to my website, libertyunderattack.com. I've got all the links to all of my pages on there. There's also some very good information that's all documented and sourced, as I mentioned just earlier. And also go check out my YouTube channel. If you aren't watching it there, go check it out. I've got a lot of great stuff on there. Also, I have a store on Gallery with some one-of-a-kind shirts. Every single shirt or bumper sticker purchased does help my my work that I'm doing in this movement. So every purchase was greatly appreciated, and I can guarantee you that it will go towards this. So I've got a very special guest with me this evening. His name is Matt. I found him on Tumblr. I have about one page for Liberty Under Attack on every single social media network. Because not everyone likes every single network. And I was really intrigued by some of the stuff that he was posting. Some of the stuff that he was posting about war. Some of the exposés that were on his page were honestly mind-blowing, extremely in depth, and I knew I had to have a discussion with this guy at the very least. And I was lucky enough to have him respond to one of my messages. I asked him if he would be interested in an interview, and he responded to me. And here we are this evening. So I'd like to introduce you to Matt. So Matt, what first awakened you? What made you start researching?
Well, how I started off was around 2004, 2005. I've been following the website Iraqnet, which initially focused on the Iraq War. Okay? Well, that really pushed me into understanding why I am against the war on terror, because I saw these people suffering, I saw their infrastructure destroyed. I cannot back this concept. It is against all human values. You can't say you're for freedom and then destroy other people's freedoms and livelihoods. It's unacceptable. It's contradictory. We cannot do this. Iraqnet was important to me in centralizing how I was going to name my blog years later. This was 6 or 7 years down the road, because the integration of SAS forces, that is British intelligence, and CIA working to foment sectarian strife amongst Iraqi cities. Fallujah was very important to this, of course, before the phosphorus and uranium droppings. This is the use of forcing people to act against their will. That is essentially what is terrorism. You don't want people to, bring harm to others. But this war, what it did is it brought out the worst in people. What really got me to this point and really helped me understand is Mike Preisner's testimony in 2007. He's a retired war vet, and he admitted the terrorism is the occupation. That is an accurate assessment to me, because while, yes, Saddam did bring suffering, he did it through Western policymakers. He was backed by turned against him. This has been an ongoing phenomenon throughout U.S. history. It is not exclusive, especially to the Middle East. It's been done throughout Central America and other areas, especially Southeast Asia. I would like to think that in starting my blog, EndTheTerrorWar, that we can denounce all terrorism, and in doing that, we are challenging what has become the terror-industrial complex. It is the profiteering off of people's suffering and the destruction of their countries. That includes the United States, because we are not exclusive to being targets from these profiteers. They will literally target Americans, and they don't care. As far as I'm concerned, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Blackwater, whoever, they don't care for American civilians. They want the profit. In fact, during 2006, I believe, during Katrina, Blackwater was deployed, according to an eyewitness on Rich.com, and she admitted that they started disappearing people. I'll try. And this became a huge problem because it's literally targeting American citizens in one of the earliest periods of the War on Terror. This testimony really frightened me because I don't want that to happen to any American or even anyone not American. It's scary to see these mercenaries targeting us. And yet, there are a variety of groups out there like this. An important document for how the terror war came about is Clean Break, a new strategy for securing the realm. This is an Israeli document that geopolitically focuses down what are called enemy states: Syria, Iran, Lebanon, local neighbors, including Palestine. What this did was it backed extremist groups, mostly Sunnis, like the Muslim Brotherhood, against Shiites, or Shia. The issue here is that we can't allow this sort of thing to happen. The division between Muslim peoples is easily a profiteering scheme, and it must be exposed, and it deserves protests and everything else we can throw at it. The problem with the Animal Enterprise Terrorism Act, this is a 2006 document, was that it was arbitrary. How do you know these people are actually terrorizing animals? I mean, these could be their pets, and they just, they aren't abusing them, necessarily. If the state wants to have animals to abuse, it does it all the time. So, when civilians do it, it's questionable, because they assume full control over your life. How do they know what is terrorism? Who gave them that decision? You know, it's really strange and a bit Orwellian, because literally there is active work by the Rand Corporation to use animals as weapons against people in other countries. How is that not terrorism? You know, it contradicts the entire point of that act, which is to supposedly stop terrorism.
Instilling fear.
Exactly.
No matter how you look at it, no matter what weapons they're using.
Mm-hmm. Plan Colombia and the School of the Americas. This is big, because the aspect of Plan Colombia was supposedly to stop the drug war, but this is also supposedly to stop terrorism. That isn't the case, because for years they've been saying there has been a rise in terrorism groups, we must stop them. Well, that makes no sense, because of you, we have these terrorist groups in the first place. This makes no sense, unless there's a profiteering scheme.
We've got the drugs too.
Exactly. And the School of the Americas is an institution that has exploited these localized peoples for its own benefit. It doesn't care using these people as mercenaries, whether they're killed or they're still alive. It doesn't matter. They're just pawns to them. In 1948, Israel had Plan Dalet, or Plan D. This was a terror campaign to influence, via terrorism, basically the immigration of Palestinians out of their homeland. This is wrong on so many fronts, and deserves to be named. In October 2007, Saudi Arabia reportedly had human tracking chips, supposedly for terrorists, but this could be applied to anybody. This is a huge problem. This is an aspect of totalitarian surveillance. And if you're surveilled all the time, it's questionable how they will define terrorism. It could be anything. If I get the wrong drink, say if I want hot cocoa instead of water, am I a terrorist? Why? Well, what is this based on? Nothing.
What is a clear definition? What is the definition of terrorism to these people? Because the definition of terrorism pretty much exposes everything they've ever done.
Right. And they use these blankets over entire people's lives. If you supposedly make the wrong decision, if you like the wrong thing, you're supposedly a terrorist. That makes no sense. You're not bringing harm to anybody else. It's just a matter of what you like to do. The fact that I like to sing does not mean that I want to bring harm to anybody. Not at all. Especially those that can't hear. Not at all. No way.
But if you sing about the wrong things, they're definitely going to be after you.
Yep. Absolutely. This tracking chip thing was backed by the German Patent Trademarking Office, or DPMA, and the Saudi government. USS Liberty.
I was hoping you mentioned that. I really was.
It's great because when you focus on Liberty, even in naming, it's kind of funny that they would attack Liberty, because Israel's supposed existence is founded upon the liberty of the Jewish people, supposedly. So why are they attacking a ship named for freedom? This is odd.
And the real question is, why are they attacking a ship that was operated by those that fund their existence?
There's also that aspect.
So I throw that in there. Go ahead.
Yes, it's fine. The Liberty incident is intriguing. They say they want to be our allies, yet they go about attack us. And even with executive orders and everything, I believe it was Truman at the time, just shrugged it off. Like it's nothing. I don't care. Let them die, you know. Full spectrum dominance. The Full Spectrum Dominance in Joint Vision 2020. This is a May 2000 document. The issue with full spectrum dominance is it literally assumes dominance over the entire planet. Not only countries, but people's lives and their livelihoods. This is done through both the World Bank and the IMF as well.
And the Federal Reserve.
Absolutely. You can't imply that you're going to defeat terrorism and then say that you want to implement a policy of dominance, because this policy of dominance is going to get people to react. And when they're going to react, you're going to call it terror. How convenient. This is a trap. There's no better word for it. They are entrapping people to supposedly become terrorists and to further this agenda of dominance. It's not for global security, it's for global control. In September 2008, WikiLeaks released Army Special Ops Forces Unconventional Warfare. This is a fun document. It admits, frankly, open, black and white, the use of irregulars or regular forces to commit terrorism. For our people, for the U.S. Army, they admit using these people as pawns. Now, hold on a second. In one of Bush's earliest speeches, he said we're going to launch the war on terror to stop terrorism. So then why does this document say that we're using people as terrorists for our own advantage? A little interesting fact there. They admit the use of irregular warfare or terrorism via the irregular forces or terrorists. This is very relevant to Syria's current situation as well as previously Libya's, for those who might be curious. And remember, this document was released in September 2008. This is before Libya and before Syria. Well, before the official declared war, anyways.
We've been at war.
They've been targeted for years, of course.
Oh yeah, definitely. They've had sanctions on their natural resources for quite a while. Instead of actually, I would actually consider that a declaration of war or a form of terrorism.
It is.
Putting sanctions. I mean, I think Syria and Iraq both had huge fields of natural resources, and then all of a sudden, like they were like the second in the Middle East, and all of a sudden they dropped down because of sanctions from the West.
Yep. And of course, switching currencies. Can't be doing that.
Nope. Can't go against those that control the resources. I mean, it's pretty much a way to.
The petrodollar must survive.
It's pretty much a chokehold. So we're gonna strangle you of all your resources if you don't conform to what we want you to do. Yep. And most of them. I mean, Gaddafi, for example. A lot of people don't know this about Gaddafi. He may not have been a nice guy. He may have been a dictator, but the plans that he had for his country. A lot of people don't know about that. He was building a reservoir in the desert, and also a bunch of other things. He was trying to it genuinely seemed like
oil.
Yeah, he was genuinely trying to help his people, but that can't happen for the West because they don't have control of it.
Internationally criminalized for it.
Yep. He definitely was.
And here comes NATO.
Yep. Indeed.
One of my favorite authors regarding how you want to focus on the war on terror is Mark Held for RAWA, or excuse me a moment.
You're all right.
The Revolutionary Association of the Women of Afghanistan, or RAWA. Mark Held has been documenting events in Afghanistan from 2001 forward, ever since the so-called war on terror started, against literally Afghanistan's being terrorized by U.S. forces, and of course NATO. We're not stopping terrorism by committing it. That's just the plain truth. I mean, even if you could say, yes, there is one Al-Qaeda terrorist there, that doesn't mean to destroy an entire village over it. You don't massacre these people just to get one guy. No. That is unethical.
And that leads into...
and there are far more sensible strategic approaches you can make if you want to actually get a terrorist that doesn't involve actually massacring entire villages. No way.
And that's one thing I try to explain that to people is I hear people whenever ISIS beheaded James Foley supposedly, which it did not look like it actually. It looked like it was a movie, honestly, to me. But people were saying to turn the Middle East into glass because of that. And
yay, depopulation.
Exactly. That's one of the major themes. The best way to depopulate the world is to constantly just murder innocent people, murder millions and millions of people. I think it was back in it was Madeleine Albright back in the late 90s. I think there's like 500,000 what country was that? 500,000 Middle Eastern children. I remember exactly what country it was, but
it was Iraq.
Iraq. Yeah, she was being interviewed on, it was like NBC nighttime or some shit like that, and the interviewer is like, so the 500,000 children dead, is that worth it? And she says, the
Of
price,
course it
we
is.
think the price is worth it. 500,000 children. Did they have anything to do with this conflict? Did they have anything to do with what their supposed terrorist,
Dictator did.
yeah, did they have anything to do with that? I don't think
It had
so.
nothing to do with what Saddam did, yet they were targeted.
Oh, yeah, they were. They were. And I mean, that's one thing. Depopulation factors into war, 1,000%.
And it's always been that way.
It has. Um, I mean, their goal is to, I think it's 500 million people.
Hmm.
And Bill Gates has spoke about that, and also it's also on the Georgia Guidestones, and also some other eugenicists, some well-known eugenicists have spoken about that. And 500 million people, they've got to do a lot more than war.
Hmm.
And to consider how much damage this this war on the false pretenses of terror, to think
Hmm.
about how that has impacted countries and lives. We ain't seen nothing yet.
Yeah,
We
it
ain't
only gets
seen
better.
nothing.
That's me being sarcastic. uh,
It only gets better for them.
yep. I would like to recommend a blog to the viewers. It's called Making the World Safe for Hypocrisy. This is a view of U.S. history. There are actually book names listed, so if you want to check those out, you can go ahead. The author does a great job of going through American history from start to finish. You know, from the Pilgrims all the way to currently he's up to 1952. So, yeah.
He's doing a lot of work then.
Yep.
He's only
I,
up to
I, I
1952.
admire his work even if he hasn't updated lately.
Well, I mean, not being
So,
active, I've had that downfall as well. So I don't hold anything against him.
right. I believe his name is Mark Harold, if I got that correctly.
Okay.
Um, you can contact him at making the world safe for hypocrisy at gmail.com or mtwsfh at gmail. Okay. Anyways, he runs a great blog and I recommend it to viewers, listeners.
Definitely check that out, guys. Definitely check that out.
It literally goes into the earliest American wars, so you can check that out.
And plug your blog too.
Yes. It is EndTheTerrorWar. Excuse me. .tumblr.com. There you
And
go.
the
Uh,
terror war at .tumblr.com. It's definitely a great blog. When I was on Tumblr, more than I am now. I stick to Facebook more often than not now. Um, but when I was on Tumblr a lot, there was about 3 names that I remembered on Tumblr, and his was one of them. And that's with following 1,000 blogs or something along those lines. So he's definitely someone. The stuff you're hearing today is definitely not something you just want to just let go,
Ignore.
let go in one ear and out the other. It's not that. Um, Definitely pay attention to what he's saying in this interview, and also definitely check out his blog. There's a lot of really good information on there.
I would like everyone to notice that I try and focus on really important content, so I don't want to make people feel that it's all mundane. There's a strong focus on things of interest, so I don't think you'll have to worry about being bored too much.
No, it's definitely all been interesting so far. Um, it definitely has. So, I mean, let's continue this a little bit. So let's touch heavily. I did a video on this a couple of months ago. On it was a short video, so I couldn't get into all the specifics like I want you to. Large request. I want you. I didn't get into all the specifics about the current happenings going on in the Middle East, but
Mhm.
I did do a short video. It was 15 minutes on the real reasons why we're going back into Syria and back into Iraq and actually funding the Syrian rebels once again.
Mhm.
But the thing most people forget is that they actually pledged allegiance to Al Qaeda. One thing that really irks me that people they don't think twice about. It was in mainstream media articles, and it's actually the truth. They pledge your allegiance to Al Qaeda. Al Qaeda was supposedly the terrorist group that committed the most heinous act in American history, but we're funding them this time. Um, Another instance of funding terrorism.
Welcome to the Terror Industrial Complex.
The terror industrial complex, exactly. And I mean, it's just a, I don't like to swear, but it's a shit cycle. That's all it
It
is.
is.
It is. That's all it is. That is all it is. And it goes back. It literally. I've been awake for a few years now, and I look back into history, and I could just watch this stuff forming, just watch it progress into what we see today. And I've been extremely awake for the past year and a half or 2 years, and just watching all of these things happen, and people not even noticing that it's the same game over and over again. They changed the name. Hell, they even changed after about a month in the media, they changed the name of ISIS to ISIL. Then they call it the Islamic State, and they called it like 4 different names because the average person can't keep up with that. They think there is like a different organization.
Nope.
Oh, ISIL? ISIL? Oh, wow, there's 2 groups now? Oh, Islamic 3 groups? Wow. Wow, we are definitely in trouble. And that is, again, what do
We
we
better
call that?
free them all, but it's one group.
We call that the terror war. We call that fear mongering. We call that using our fear to follow up with their desires, which
It's
is in
manipulation.
fact the New World Order. Which, if you don't believe in the New World Order, go check out my page, my website, libertyunderattack.com. There's a whole tab dedicated to it, and it's not as
I do have a few
expansive.
texts for it on my blog as well.
Okay, definitely go check out his blog as well. Um, um, yeah, it's not as expansive as it should be, but there's enough quotes there from pretty powerful people that you've definitely heard of, and also some very revealing, some very other revealing things on there that could definitely at least raise some interest or make you raise your eyebrow. We're not asking you to believe everything we say. We're not asking you to um, do anything. We're not asking you to do anything. We're asking you to hear us out and follow up with your own research. That's all I've ever wanted you to do, and I know that's what Matt wants you to do as well. Do your own research.
Absolutely.
If you come to the same conclusion, great. If not, if you've done thorough research and you come to a different conclusion with different evidence to back it
That's
up,
okay.
come to us. I want to hear. I want to hear. I want to hear other opinions, other viewpoints. I want to see other evidence from the opposing side.
You're more than welcome.
Definitely, definitely. I'm not in it for the beliefs I have now. I'm not going to have in 10 years. They're going to change, and I want you guys. I want my viewers to be the ones that bring those to me, which hasn't happened yet, but I'm hoping someday soon, it will happen. So Matt, hate to take it off track. I really do.
It's okay.
So I'm a constitutionalist, and you are
An anarchist.
an anarchist. Okay.
I also lean as voluntarist, but you know.
I am also I'm also all very into volunteerism.
Yep.
So so let me actually you first. So your views on anarchy. What do you think? Do you think it's possible in the world we live in today? Um, what are your there's obviously some different viewpoints in anarchism. There's anarcho-capitalism. There's manarchism. Both of
Mhm.
those kind of involving capitalism to some degree. I
Right.
don't know what your view on capitalism is, but I mean that's more the segment of libertarianism. But they go hand in hand with anarchy.
Hmm.
So what are your specific viewpoints on anarchism? What do you think should be there? What do you think shouldn't be there? Do you think it should be complete freedom with no restraint? Just give us a little insight.
Okay, well, how I view myself as an anarchist, if that's a good start, um, I believe in absolute freedom. No rulers, self-liberation. What would necessarily be called vigilante justice, just not necessarily, enacting violence against others. I mean, you gotta have self-defense, of course. um, that is my viewpoint of freedom. It is ultimate self-individuality. It's not up to collectivism. No. While I understand leftist viewpoints, I don't necessarily, you know, hold them strongly. Neither do I hold strongly to the rightist side of the coin of being an anarchist either. I guess you could say I'm a bit of a centralist. um, I do think it is disconcerting how anarchist movements can actually be manipulated, if not actually created by states or whatever. This is a huge problem and deserves to be recognized. I believe it was in 2007, there was a protest in Canada, and there were cops posing as anarchists and riling people up and, trying to cause, poverty damage, possibly even physically harm people. And the good thing is these people were routed out and, they were named as provocateurs. That's good. You need to watch out for that kind of thing. I'm not necessarily against constitutionalism as an anarchist, not at all. I mean, I understand exactly why it's there. I do agree with the checks and balances, absolutely. A check on power is necessary, no matter what. It must be done. There has to be accountability. So, I am not against the Constitution at all. It's just a matter of principle. It's how far does authority go against the individual? That's very difficult. I mean, I do not necessarily say, let's kill the president. I am not that extremist, no way. But I do believe we must absolutely protest. We must, use alternative means. I'm not just going to use a voting booth to get what I want, because that can be a form of violence against others.
And definitely a form of control.
Exactly. And I don't want to bring that kind of authority on other people, much less myself. So why would I vote? I'm not going to. I am very strongly a non-voter, and this is actually a tag and something you can follow on my blog. So if you're interested, you can follow that. I helped one of my father's friends before he passed away in Florida. He was running a local campaign for election, and while I didn't mind helping, because, there's nothing wrong with being a good Samaritan, helping a friend, being compassionate, I was more bothered by the notion that, I have to coerce or bully people to get the vote out. I have to get this for him. Why? Why must we behave this way to each other during elections? That bothers me, always.
Manipulation.
Exactly. I can't do that. And in fact, during the recent midterm elections, I did a sit-in protest, and I actually helped a handicapped girl get into her parents' vehicle, because I just said there's more I can do outside the vote than just, who am I going to pick for my ruler today?
Exactly.
Or what policy should I forcibly implement on others? I'm not going to do that. I don't want that. That's not who I am. Well, that's a good description of how I'm an anarchist and my different viewpoints, especially on voting and everything.
Definitely. So I want to bring up one thing. This is one thing. This is one aspect I found. I was looking for articles on the agent provocateurs, and this was back in 2014. This article was written, and it actually happened in Chicago. It was in my state, so I definitely looked into it a little bit.
Absolutely.
These 3 young activists were acquitted of terrorism charges. They used Molotov cocktails. So to continue on, they were painted as violent anarchists, and it was actually the cops got them drunk, and they pretty much manipulated them into doing this. And let's see,
Of course
it was Huffington Post. They manipulated them into doing this, and they're still going to get terrorism charges. So
that is the stupid FBI entrapment cases, I swear.
Yeah, and the FBI was involved as well. But I mean, I was just going to bring that up because it's definitely something to.
They are connected.
Anyone preaching freedom is going to be an enemy to those in power.
Of course.
Because the only
they don't want you to have personal freedom.
The only freedom that they want you to have is what they give you, and it's
like their boots.
Nothing. It's nothing. You have the freedom to be enslaved. That's it. So let me kind of touch on my view on.
They're
my
fascists.
view on constitutionalism. A lot of people are kind of thrown off because I do a lot of research on secret societies, and I'm definitely against Freemasonry, and against secret societies and all together. And no, yeah, I'm sure you do. Our founding fathers were Freemasons.
There it is.
Their goal was to carry out the Great Plan. America is actually named after Lucifer, Amaru, the serpent. Most people don't know that either, which is one reason. I'm not a Christian, but at the same time, I search for the truth. Calling America a Christian nation is the most hypocritical thing you could ever do because it's actually named after Lucifer. So just run with that. It was not after Amerigo, one of the first settlers, whatever they called him. That's not true.
I remember running
So
facts like that.
I know the history behind this country and how the Constitution was written. Um, I've also done a lot of research on the Constitution. I've dug into it a lot, and I've found out how, with some help from Ralph Epperson, who I'll talk about later, at the conclusion of this interview. I've also tracked down how we've gotten into this position that we've been in today, how the Constitution got us to where we are today.
Excuse me, Shane.
Yep, go for it.
If you don't mind, I'd just like to share one of my favorite quotes.
Go for it.
In many ways, terrorism and counterterrorism are univocally connected. So often, in the end, tragically, they are self-perpetuating, sustained by their myriad humanitarian geographies. This is especially so as both the war on terrorism and radical Islamism tend to demonize the messy cosmopolitanism of cities, construing them as intrinsically immoral, sinful, and unnatural places. It is no wonder that both barbarisms murderously target cities and their inhabitants, or that both the neocon Christian and the Islamic fundamentalism share what Zillah Eisenstein terms a masculinist militarist mentality, in which violence is the path to creative destruction of cities, nations, or civilizations. The Manichaean mirrors of the two polarized fundamentalists inevitably produce a duplication and reduplication of violence. What results is a convergence between state terror and non-state terror. The ultimate catastrophe of the war on terror, as Dovzhiv Zalaika points out, is that such a categorically ill-defined, perpetually deferred, simple-minded good versus evil war echoes and recreates the very absolutist mentality and exceptionalist tactics of the insurgent terrorists. Zalaika further suggests that by firmly adopting the terrorists' own game, one that by definition lacks rules of engagement, definite endings, that's important, definite endings, clear alignments between enemies and friends, or formal arrangements of any sorts, military, political, legal, or ethical, the inevitable danger lies in reproducing endlessly. The real danger of the war on terror, then, is that it has closely paralleled Al-Qaeda invoking homogeneous, exclusionary notions of community as a way of legitimizing massive violence against civilians. The strategies and discourse of both the Bush administration and Al-Qaeda, characterized by charged, mutually reinforced dialectics, relied on hypermasculine notions of asymmetric warfare, invocations of a theological mandate, and absolutist notions of violence, with the goal being to create a fixed, boundless, eternal social order through the ultimate extermination of the enemy. Both have also relied heavily on the use of transnational media to reiterate a rhetoric of good versus evil and a spectacle of victimhood, demonization, dehumanization, and revenge. That is Stephen Graham, Cities Under Siege, pages 39 and 40.
Very good.
That is a good quote.
Very good addition. I like that a lot. Definitely like that. Definitely did.
I believe that was necessary to add to our interview.
It was. I'm glad you stepped in and quoted that. So
You were saying.
I just wanted to me and him we've had discussions before, and we've come across the constitutionalist versus anarchist. I used to be an anarchist, and I do believe in some of the I do believe that there should be no authority. There should be government leads to tyranny. It always has, and it always will. But looking at it at a realistic level, in a philosophical or in a small commune, anarchy would work. But in today's world, you've got to look at how many people are dependent upon government for food alone. You've got to look at how many people are live just plain out immoral lives that damage others. Um, you've got to look at the fact that, I mean, I wouldn't trust half the people I live around without authority. I mean, it sounds bad, but I mean, I just can't see anarchy working in our society today, or actually ever in America's history, only because, especially today, people are so dependent upon the government. I think it's like 51% of people are dependent upon some sort of food aid from the government. 51% of people. That doesn't show independence and
No.
an ability to rule themselves. That shows complete dependence, complete and utter dependence. Um, like I said, philosophically, I think it could probably work. I do. But once I looked at things at a realistic level and realized how little it takes for someone to just injure somebody else, whether it be literally or whether it be injure someone else's freedom, such as like rob their store or something along those lines. I mean, and that's definitely influenced by their surroundings, what they're exposed to, and also other things. But as society right now, I don't think it could ever be an anarchist society. That's why I'm a constitutionalist.
That's fair.
I do believe, like I said, every government turns tyrannical. It does, but I think I would also label myself as a philosophical constitutionalist because I don't think we'll never have the Constitution back. I'm realistic at that note. There's enough progressives out there that'll never happen again.
Right.
But I do believe that these are naturally born rights. The rights listed in the Constitution. The rights to
Absolutely.
life, liberty, and private property, which it's what it originally was. You can't have happiness unless you have private property. I think that was one of the founding fathers. I remember which one. But
Jefferson, I believe.
yeah, I think that's right. Life, liberty, and private property. And
Or Anderson.
I can't remember which one. I definitely cannot. But it's just government reaffirmed rights and the separation of powers. If people would just, I mean, this is another thing. Like it's philosophical because I don't see it ever happening. It's just like anarchism for me. To have people actually hold the people they vote in accountable and pay attention to what they're doing and to actually care about anything else other than their materialistic needs, materialistic wants, not needs, that's just outlandish for me to think about right now. Society has deteriorated so far. It really has. We've become demoralized in a lot of ways, and I don't. I'm a constitutionalist because I believe that inherently people cannot rule themselves. Um, I believe philosophically they can, but in what we've seen throughout history, I just don't think I don't think it's possible. And I mean, the Constitution granted freedom until 1871, until Lincoln.
Yep.
It was definitely the freest nation in the history of the world until the 1860s. And I can honestly say that's probably the longest in the history of the world. So I mean that's kind of my stance. I don't know if I kind of jumped around a little bit, but that's kind of my thoughts on why I'm a constitutionalist.
I don't disagree with the notion of the need for self-sufficient living. Absolutely, we must focus on that. Whether we believe in the Constitution or we're just outright full anarchist, either way, or whatever you believe in, either way, there's nothing wrong with looking for a self-sufficient lifestyle. Nothing at all. In fact, that is my goal. I would love to live that way.
Actually, let me add one more thing since you just mentioned that. So from it was the 1930s, like 95% of people they grew their own food. Today we're dependent on grocery stores. Do you think?
Yep.
Do you really think that? This is just it's not a question you need to answer. I'm just asking it.
Okay.
Do you really think that people could provide for themselves if they can't even provide their own food for themselves? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I understand. Really, it's a question of how to me. How do we go about doing this? Um, I mean, look at farmers markets,
And
for
again,
example.
sorry to interrupt again. Again,
It's okay.
people don't provide their own food for themselves, and they're dependent on the government for their food.
Hmm.
Go ahead. I
I get you.
apologize.
I was just saying, farmers markets. This is people interacting without necessarily government intervention.
Free free enterprise.
Exactly. Um, I believe in that sort of system. Absolutely, we can show that people can independently, work together to make that in society. In fact, when I was reading American Holocaust, good book by the way, um, he actually documents that the Indians had a pretty complex agricultural system in California, and it was pretty impressive because it followed the entire coastline all the way up to Washington. I'm like, wow, that is a way to live because, I mean, you know, they did it themselves. They didn't beg for help necessarily that we know of. They didn't go to any centralized authority. They just worked together as a community and solved the issue. We're hungry, so let's plant these crops. Or, we need to make these irrigation dishes. Okay, let's do it. So I believe it's possible, even though it's really difficult in the current environment. Absolutely. Especially with the aspect of weather warfare. That makes things 100 times more difficult to try and address this issue of self-sufficient lifestyles. So it's not necessarily people's fault because they can be targeted by these governments that, all at the same time, supposedly trying to provide for them, also are targeting them. You know,
To make them dependent again.
exactly. It's basically a two-pronged attack against people. you know,
It's
on one side
basically
you're attacking them, you're attacking their environment, but at the same time you're supposedly providing food for them and supposedly being the good neighbor. But
like I
that's
said,
government isn't.
it's a shit cycle.
Yeah. I mean, it's literally terrorizing people just to say, "Hi, I'm your friend." But no, no, I don't think so. You don't put people in those situations just to play the good guy. That doesn't, no, that doesn't fly with me. But yeah, I hope you understand where I'm coming from.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. Um, I guess one more thing I wanted to add about the constitutionalist aspect is from the organic constitution is a lot different from what we see today. The
Mm,
organic constitution it grants two things. It only grants the government two powers. The power, or not even the power, it's rights granted by the people. They
mm,
have to protect the people's civil liberties and provide defense. Anything beyond that is unconstitutional. And that's what when you say that to most people, they don't understand it. I mean, we have the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, the NRO, which people don't know about.
mm-hmm.
You have all of these organizations. You have the FDA. Um, you have so many organizations.
DEA.
Yes,
This, that, and the other thing.
so many organizations. Anything beyond protecting the people's civil liberties and providing defense for the people is literally unconstitutional.
I hope you don't mind me saying that I find the argument that, it's big government versus small government is kind of false dichotomy because you're not really addressing the issue of, protecting personal freedoms or anything like that, right?
Oh yeah, no,
It's
I agree. That's what a lot of the things the right say is like, oh, we want small government, and it's like, well, define small government. And
exactly.
they would
What are
say
the parameters you're setting?
if my guy is in power, then I have small government. If Bush is in power, then I have small government.
Bullshit.
There's if you hear the small government versus big government debate, then automatically it's null and void. There's no debate. There is really no debate. The debate is where it comes in is the Constitution versus the organic Constitution,
Hmm.
and that's where I stand. The only two powers granted to the government are to protect this people's civil liberties, and also to provide defense.
Hmm.
And that the provide defense is not even wholly the federal government. That's what militias were designed for. They were to protect um,
Local
America
communities.
from
Yeah.
enemies, foreign and domestic.
Yep.
And that's there's I mean, I follow a lot of pages on Facebook, and a lot of these pages have no idea what the Constitution even says. They say they're constitutionalists. They say that they're about freedom and all this stuff, but they have no idea what the hell they're talking about. And
I mean, I don't pretend to
it's
know,
honestly infuriating. It's honestly infuriating. And I mean, these people are talking
Mhm.
about how like they're putting quotes about democracy and how it's the way we should live. And
I should rule by majority over you. No.
I always post one. I always post two quotes. One was by Lenin, which is
I think I understand.
democracy is indispensable to socialism. The next
Mhm.
one is Karl Marx, democracy is the road to socialism.
Mhm.
And there's usually no debate back because those people are two of the most heinous dictators that ever lived. They committed democide among a lot of people, a lot of their own citizens, and I mean they said it themselves. Democracy is not freedom.
Mhm.
It's not in the least bit.
Well, Lenin by action and Marx by indoctrination, but I get you.
Close enough. I mean,
I get what you're saying.
violence and indoctrination. It's, I mean, one takes longer than the other. That's the only difference.
Yeah,
um,
I get you.
but yeah, I mean, it's people don't understand the organic constitution. They don't even know that there's a difference. They have no idea. Anything?
I like to recommend viewers. One of my favorite people that likes to submit stuff to my blog is Spooky Froll.
Mm,
Um,
I know of him.
and um, I just like to say that I like their submissions because they involve, other heinous acts by the government of, basically funding the enemy, arming them, that sort of thing. Actually creating an enemy in the first place. you know, um, this goes back to World War One, Soviet Union, you know, everything, and I just believe that's important to our viewers to focus on as well because um, it's no different right now in this context of the supposed war on terror either. Because look at where we are. We're funding Al Qaeda, but we're supposedly against Al Qaeda.
We're
Okay then.
we're funding Al Qaeda, but we're supposedly against terrorism. What?
Yeah, right.
What?
Welcome to the terror industrial complex, and I don't mean that word lightly.
No, I mean, it's from where we're sitting. It's definitely a little comical, but it's
hmm
definitely not a laughing matter. And that's one thing I try to make a clear
It's not even
distinction on.
dark
Is
humor; it's just sad.
it's comical because it's extremely sad that I mean the most
It's
basic
a
thing.
hilarious contradiction. That's what it is.
Yes, we're funding the Syrian rebels who pledged their allegiance to Al Qaeda, the same organization that committed the most heinous terrorist attack on our country. And we supposedly went into like 12 countries because of, actually it's about 6 or 7, but regardless,
Well,
we invaded 6 or 7
well, to be
countries.
fair, global war on terror. Great.
Yeah.
The entire freaking world. That makes
Yep.
no sense at all.
Yeah.
Because I'm not sure if you knew this, but before 9/11, Al Qaeda was a relatively small group and could have actually, disintegrated if it wasn't for, Washington backing them and 9/11 happening. You know, if it
Oh, yeah.
wasn't that, they wouldn't have expanded.
Definitely. And I think Bin Laden. This is one thing where I want you guys to do your own research yourself and come back to me with it because I've done a little research on it. But this is just kind of something I'm throwing out there. The radical Islam that we see today. Osama bin Laden was the first one to go about that. I mean, regardless of what you believe, and maybe in their Bible, there was some questionable things in the Bible. There's also some questionable things,
Yep.
but the radical Islam we
Marry the
see
rapist.
today, yeah, exactly,
What is that
exactly.
nonsense? No offense
But
to believers, of course.
yeah, it's just we're just comparing. Um, but to say that radical Islam was not always there. It was started whenever the CIA started when they recruited Bin Laden. And for those of you who don't know, the CIA Bin Laden was a CIA asset. So was Hussein. Um, the majority of them were CIA assets. The ones we've ended up killing when they finally said, you know what, I'm done with this shit.
Yep.
Get out of my country. And then we go to war with them. And usually it's by something fomented, or they just say, "Oh, Assad used chemical weapons. Let's go in."
Um.
No, like it literally happens, and then about
mhm.
2 hours after, the mainstream media is saying Assad used chemical weapons. Wow,
It's kind of a
that was
spoiler
a
alert here, but I gotta mention this.
go for
Um,
it.
at the end of Devil's Game by Robert Dreyfuss, he mentions that this is before Mubarak was toppled in Egypt. Mubarak tells, I believe it was the Bush administration, before they're leaving office and everything, guys, you got to stop the Muslim Brotherhood. They're coming after me. Now, yes, he's a dictator, but think about this. The United States has been backing the Muslim Brotherhood for decades, and Dreyfus goes into this. Now, hold on a second. Egypt is an ally state, and Mubarak has been our dictator. How about that? That's totally relevant. And here's our dictator saying, guys, why are you doing this to me? How about that? I mean, he was literally pleading to Washington, why are you doing this? And it has nothing to do with sympathizing with dictators. It has everything to do with the geopolitics of it. Why are we doing this to these people in any number of countries? I believe that's an important point to focus on because it's relevant. We say we're going to support the Arab Spring, which happened, and turn around, and what happens? There are terrorist groups popping up, and the United States backs them against Assad. Huh. Well, the Muslim Brotherhood couldn't have got off the ground in Libya if they didn't first take out Mubarak in Egypt. How convenient. Just something to think about. Okay, Shane, there you go.
That was very good, indeed. I want to ask you one question. We didn't talk about this in our calls. What do you know about about Chechnya? There are apparently some CIA-funded cells that were going on there right outside of Russia. What do you know about that? Can you give us any insight on that?
Can you hold on a minute, please?
Yeah, no problem. Because that was pretty big around the Boston bombing. Apparently, the Tsarnaev brothers they left the United States as terrorists, supposed terrorists. Then they went to Chechnya to a supposed terrorist cell. Then they came back to the United States and they were let back in somehow. So I just want to hear what your input on that is. I haven't done a whole lot of research on it. Pretty much all I ever heard about it was around that incident. But beyond that, I haven't heard a whole lot.
Okay. It is in Devil's Game, so it does focus in that book.
Okay.
The events leading to Russia, basically, strategically. What happens in the Caucasus, or, around Chechnya and Georgia, and that environment, it's basically the same situation that happened with, Al-Qaeda supposedly being abandoned by Washington and supposedly this leading to 9/11. They felt abandoned by Washington during the Cold War, and this rise of Islamic extremists put pressure on Russia. Russia retaliates. Washington reacts back and is trying to get the country of Georgia into NATO right now, along with Ukraine. So
Ukraine, that brings another interesting situation into the mix.
Yes. So those those aspects are all connected.
I want to ask you not to deter the topic, but did you watch one of my favorite pages on YouTube, and it's also a website, or not on YouTube and Facebook and the website, is Storm Cloud's Gathering.
Yeah, I've seen it.
They're very good, and their video on the Ukraine situation was extremely good. So you guys, for anyone watching, go check out what they do. They the guy who does, I don't know if it's a group or if it's just him. Seems like it's just him. It's a group. Okay. I mean,
I may be wrong, but I think so.
they do a lot of work. They do a lot of work, and they make sure to document everything. And their videos, like they're like, okay, work on a new video, and like 2 weeks later they'll say, yeah, I'm still working on it. They do a lot of research and a lot of digging, and a lot of their stuff is just clips.
To be fair, their video editing is very impressive.
I know. I want to find out who they're using, or if who's doing their videos, because
it makes you kind of envious, doesn't it? Like, wow.
Yeah, no joke, dude.
That is some good stuff.
It is, and that's
especially. I'm not sure if you've seen, the basic smoke effects that they use, stuff like that. That's just like, wow.
Yeah, I think that's probably Photoshop, but I'm
Just the
hoping.
same, it's good work.
Oh
It's
yeah,
good work.
definitely, definitely. Which Photoshop is something that's beyond me, so I'm kind of, kind of, diverting from the original subject. I hope to find someone that can help me out with that sometime, and I can actually pay now, so that's good.
It's okay. Uh,
So in essence, the Chechnya situation is pretty much the same as any other situation that.
it's pretty much no different than Afghanistan in 1980s,
Yeah.
if
Okay.
that gives you a perspective.
For me it does. Yeah. Um.
Okay.
Yeah. For me, I'm hoping that um the viewers understand the significance.
Yeah.
Um. Let's see. Let's touch on
Oh,
You want to go to a
I like to
very.
bring a quote.
Yep. Go for it.
Um, this is from Barbara Lee protesting the 2001 authorization for use of military force. This is literally starting the war on terror. She's a congresswoman. This is one of my favorite quotes. As we act, let us not become the evil that we deplore. That is a good quote because, why would we say we want to fight terrorists if all we're doing is
Funding
basically
terrorists.
making, not only making terrorists, but, having our own terror industrial complex. We create them, we fund them, you know, we make fake terror plots, this, that, and the other thing.
Mm-hmm.
Or totalitarian surveillance in the name of stopping terrorism. What is this nonsense? That bothers me about the NSA, seriously. I don't see how knowing what Facebook posts I like, what porn I like, whatever, what anything that any of that has to do with stopping terror. It
And the
doesn't.
the thing that blows me away. This is one thing that kind of threw me off was so, um, we've had whistleblowers that have been arrested, killed, imprisoned,
Mm-hmm.
so on and so forth. But
Yeah.
ISIS, it was actually in Chicago, and all my friends were freaking out about it. And this is what I tried to explain to them. In ISIS,
Mm-hmm.
there was some guy that said, "Oh, this was like a good target." He put it on Twitter. Did They couldn't find him.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't find the person that posted that picture. They couldn't do anything about it. They just let it go all over mainstream media.
Mm-hmm.
Do you really think the NSA didn't know exactly who that was? Do you really think that? If you
Yeah,
do, you're
right.
you're extremely naive. The only thing the NSA is there for to spy on is for those that are exposing the truth. For those that are exposing what they're doing.
It can be used for extortion.
Yes, indeed, it definitely can. Um,
And
I mean,
what
even
you
if
say to
you,
that? Piss off.
yep, and something to even look back into, which I'm gonna pull out. I'm gonna pull out one of my documents here. Give me a moment.
Okay.
Operation Chaos back in the 50s. So people think when Snowden came out, he was a savior, exposed the illegal spying on Americans. Like we didn't. I mean, if you look at the Telecommunications Act of '96 and you look at Operation Carnivore,
They
in
were early
'97,
whistleblowers, so it's not like he's actually,
yeah,
the first person
he's
to
he's
ever
not
exist
he's
in this
not
situation.
yeah he wasn't exposing anything, and he worked for a company that was or worked for a subsidiary that was owned by Serco, and that most people don't know about. I don't know if you do.
Um,
It's the biggest corporation you've never heard of, and he worked for
yep.
Serco. But we will leave that. I have a full presentation planned, so that's for another
I'm
time.
gonna love watching. Okay.
And that hopefully I'll have the finances and I'll have the finances. Hopefully I have the technology to do that at that time because I want that to be live. It's a PowerPoint
Right.
presentation, but it will be extremely damning. So to continue with Operation Chaos, um, so this was the first illegal domestic covert operation, largest and most pervasive domestic surveillance program in the history of the country. This
Hmm.
was um, you can trace the beginnings of this Operation Chaos to 1959 when Eisenhower used the CIA to sound out the exiles who were fleeing Cuba after the triumph of Fidel Castro's revolution. So the key thing to pay attention to here is 1959.
Hmm.
1959. And that was before. I don't know if that was. Well, I know the NSA was created by executive order, but I'm not sure if they were around at that time or not. But either way, the National Reconnaissance Organization was, and that is the front for the NSA is the front for that organization. If you don't know about the NRO, look into that. That's some creepy stuff. I will tell you that they've been around since about the 40s, I think.
um, yeah.
if not earlier. Might have been around since um, Orson Welles' broadcast of Where All the War Is, which people thought was real when it was coming over the radio. That's pretty comical if you think about it.
Uh,
Is that like 19?
Officially, it's said to have been established in 1960, but that's government for you.
Officially, so about 20
That's
years
what I'm
prior
saying.
to that.
Officially.
Definitely.
Gotta
So,
take that with a grain of salt.
oh yeah, definitely. Officially, the government officially started spying on the people when Snowden exposed it. So, um,
What a joke.
and what did that accomplish exactly? We've had some petitions and things like that, but it hasn't
Going
stopped
nowhere.
them. It hasn't stopped them. I actually did a FOIA request, and on that exact thing, and they listed like executive orders as to why they couldn't tell me what they had on me, and I was like,
Come
really?
on.
That's what you're gonna list for Freedom of Information Act?
That
Okay.
is so weak.
No, literally, like I read that thing and I was crying. I was crying, laughing, just be like
Uh,
the shit
what
that
is
they
this
threw in there.
ridiculous nonsense?
The Freedom of Information Act. I mean, you unless you're really, really good with how the government works and who you're supposed to contact, and you're very in depth about what you want, there's no way you're getting anything. I can guarantee that. I've done two, and I haven't gotten shit from either. But so let's talk about let's probably turn some viewers away here. But let's talk about Veterans Day.
Just so everyone knows, I do come from a military family, so.
Me too. Both of my grandparents were in World War II, and I actually have a tattoo of um, my grandfather's um, military shield for when he was in the military. So we both have military background, well, military families.
My cousin's been in the Marines, and my father has been in the Navy as a mechanic, so. He was deployed near Libya, so that's kind of interesting.
Benghazi.
Yeah, there's an odd connection there.
No, there's no connection. There's never any connection. It's just coincidence. It just happens randomly. Just stop asking questions.
uh, um, anyways, um, it's not meant as a slight against active or retired or even dead military members.
Nope.
The problem with Veterans Day is the state worship. Primarily, for me. We must obey whatever the government says, even if it includes killing people that did nothing to us, even if it means destroying their country. No!
Following. Hey, here's all it comes down to is following orders. I've seen so many military people say I didn't join the military to um, accept ridicule or something like that. I joined the military to follow the orders of the president of the United States, and it's like, really, really? I thought you took an oath to the Constitution, to freedom. If you're taking an oath
Right.
to freedom
What
in this
happens to the
country,
oath?
if you take an oath to this country's freedom, then why would any other country's freedom?
It's like, why would you say you want to do this oath if you're only going to be picky and choosy about it?
You know who else took orders? The SS in
Mm-hmm.
Germany. You know what they had to
Yep.
do? You know what? Unfortunately, a lot of military members will
They
do if
did
it ever comes
target
down to
other
this.
Germans, so there's that.
Yeah, you know what it'll come down to in this country. Unfortunately, a lot of military members will think that what they're doing is the right thing to do, and they'll do
We're
the same
protecting
thing to
America.
Americans. Yep, it's really sad, and I just want to reiterate again. I have the utmost respect for those who have served this country, whether they were uninformed.
I grew up going to VA hospitals and talking to veterans, so I do
Yep,
take what they say seriously, and it's not like I'm demeaning anybody. It's
exactly.
just a matter of philosophical difference.
And the reality of the situation. And I mean, both of my grandpas fought in World War II, and to know that we went to that war with, well, the reason we went to that war was because of Pearl Harbor, which had nothing to do with the Nazis, that we funded to power, by the way.
Japan was provoked into attacking Pearl Harbor.
Yeah, I think I think the president at that time was like, well, someone asked him like, how could we get you guys into this war? And he was like, well, I
Hmm.
don't know, some sort of attack, and then Pearl Harbor happened.
Hmm.
But I mean, it's definitely not. I mean, I want to reiterate this multiple times. It's not demeaning to any active military, past military, or anything. This is about the truth and what you've been deceived into fighting for. It's not about freedom. It's about spreading democracy, which is exactly what it is. It's spreading socialism across the world. It's spreading a totalitarian dictatorship. It's about the New World Order. That's what it's about. It's about destabilization of the Middle East,
If state government is so well,
and
why
it's
do we need a
about
world government?
exactly. Well, it'd be well if you think about it, from their 1,000-year plans. Their plan is to bring the population down to 500 million.
Um, just so
And
people have a reference, they can check out the McCullough memo at whatreallyhappened.com. That focuses on how Japan was provoked into attacking Pearl Harbor. It's called the McCullough memo. There
there
you
you
go.
go. There's your source. There's your source. Like I said on this page, you will get documentation and sources, and there will be plenty of sources from what we discussed in the link to this YouTube
I
video.
have academic reports and everything on my blog, so there is plenty to check out. You will not be disappointed.
Yes, and that's one thing. If you talk about how what we're talking about is BS or anything like that, and you don't go check out um, his blog EndTerrorWar.tumblr.com, and you don't go look at my website, and you don't go check out the links I post below, then I don't want to hear about how the things we're talking about are BS, because I mean you haven't even looked at anything, quite
I
frankly.
mean, there are quotes, there are pictures, there's so much you can work with on my blog. There are great articles. I mean, I seek to provide people with quality content, and that's always been the case.
Yep, same here,
I
man. Same
mean,
here.
like I said, I don't want anything mundane for people because I know how boring that can be.
Yep, it's
I
all
mean,
it's all interesting if you
if you
step
care,
away from that.
focus. That's
Yeah,
all it is. If you care, focus.
if you just take one step away from the television, from the mainstream media, or both, if you just take one step away from all of the societal norms that you've been accustomed to for so long, if you just take one step away from those things, um, the things you'll find out are they're simply mind blowing, and you'll soon realize that everything you've been taught in school, and I mean everything, it is a
I
lie.
mean, even the situation involving the Koreas. The fact that people don't know is that before the current situation in North Korea, the whole dictatorship there and everything, right? Well, before that happened, before the countries got split up, the United States actually implemented two dictators there and split the country apart. That's exactly what happened.
Yep,
It's divide and conquer.
yep. And divide and conquer
And
goes
people fell
from
for it, and look at where we are.
and divide and conquer works with dividing North Korea and South Korea, and it involves whites
And I
versus
am, I
blacks.
am, even though I don't necessarily focus on the Korean situation a lot on my blog, I do care for Korean unification because I care for the Korean people. Both of them. All of them. It doesn't even have to be, divided like that. Not at all.
They are all
Uh,
people.
exactly.
That's
And
all
they
that
don't need
matters.
these authoritarians over them, whether they're from the south or the north, you know? And they don't need this stupid wall in the way either. They're all human beings and they deserve equal chance to be working together just as much as anybody else in the world.
I'll tell you what, the North Korea South Korea situation. It's a little modern, but it's from the northern United States to the southern United States. A civil war, only a civil war that isn't financed by the French bankers, although it
Yep.
kind of is. But at the same time, it's been allowed to
Well,
continue on.
British too. But yeah, I get what you're saying.
British, there's no difference. They're all the bankers that control the Federal Reserve. They control the
I know what you
IMF.
mean. International bankers.
Yep, international bankers. Yep. And I wanted to dive into one more subject before we end this. And I'm not short of time. And are you good for a little longer?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay. So I wanted to dive into. I don't know. I mean, this is gonna be one of the shotgun surprises that I was hoping didn't happen, but I knew it would happen if we had one of these discussions. So um, we've we've discussed the IMF. We've discussed the World Bank. We have not discussed the Federal Reserve though. Um, Give me a little insight. Other than monetary, they've destroyed the economy. They've switched from a
Devalue
gold.
the dollar. Yay.
They Yeah, exactly. They've gone from um, a silver and gold currency to Federal Reserve notes, which are an instrument of debt.
Uh,
They've
Ford administration, I believe.
um, and in the 30s, it institutionalized the social security card and the birth certificate, which are I'm not going to go into depth on that now, but go to my website, the Act of 1871. You'll learn a lot about that, and you'll probably
Ooh.
won't come back to my website, but that's, I mean, it's scary stuff, to say the least. Um, so the Federal Reserve, I'll give you a little background on the things that they've done. Um, Also, one that we can forget about is people that are on Social Security. Should be called social insecurity, but or actually even better, socialist insecurity. But let's touch on the Federal Reserve a little bit. I know you definitely got some stuff to say about that, so let's hear it.
Uh, where to start? Okay. Um, as an institution, I believe the Federal Reserve has been nothing but destructive, counterintuitive, and it doesn't deserve to exist any more than the FBI causing terrorism plots or any other nonsense like that. Um, it's ridiculous that the Federal Reserve goes about, say let's blame Iran for switching currencies, for example. Let's blame Saddam for switching currencies, but it was the Federal Reserve that actually devalued the dollar by this quantitative easing.
Yep. I was hoping you mentioned that. I was hoping you
so
mentioned that.
so why are we scapegoating these people that had nothing to do with it for our own economic destruction? That is nonsense.
And you've also got to look at the fact that um, without the
Helicopter
petrodollar,
Ben.
without the petrodollar, the U.S. currency would die. And the reason you're seeing all these, you saw, you've seen countries switch away from. I know one of them was going to go to the euro. They were going to switch over from the dollar to the euro, and we definitely invaded them and persuaded them
Both Iran
violently.
and Iraq were switching to the euro, and look at we got sanctions for them. Gee, how
We got
nice.
sanctions and a war. It's the petrodollar is keeping the U.S. dollar afloat. It should not be afloat. It should have been dead 20 years ago. But they
Nope.
found ways to. I mean, there's just in the past week there's $1 trillion spending increase. The only way to um, the only way to continue this is to continue the inflation, continue the debt, and people aren't even looking at the debt from derivatives. And in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
alone for derivatives, it's like 220 trillion something dollars, $220 trillion
It's
plus.
insane.
And you look at the world debt from derivatives. This is all from the switch from a creditor to the creditor to a debtor
Mm-hmm.
nation, so to speak. From going to you have so much money you can actually loan money out to the fact that you're actually the one borrowing money.
That's like I'm not sure if you were following, but the whole basket of currencies plan, right, from China, I believe. Um,
Actually, I think China just took us over today, and economy wise, it was today
yeah,
or yesterday they did. Yeah, we're the
yeah.
second. We're the second. The United States is the second world power now.
We're number one. Not really.
The second world power. The second world power. And you know what? You know what that's caused by? It's because big corporations. It's the government's taxation, and also the government's intrusion on corporations. They've decided to go elsewhere, outsourcing, and that's what we get. They've outsourced to China because China has a slave state, and they can do everything for about 100% less than what we do.
And of course, they like to fix the unemployment data too. It's like look at our jump in employment based on what? Nothing. It's just word of mouth basically from the media.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. And there's no real statistics
There's
for
no
unemployment.
documentation of it. There's no legitimate proof that this is a solid case. It's just take my word on faith.
Yep. And
No, I
that's
can't
what
do
everyone
that.
does. They say like, oh well, Obama for example, Obama brought down the unemployment from 11% to 9%. Where did that
Obama
come
phones.
from?
Oh wait,
Where did that come
sorry.
from? Did that come from your ass, or where did it come from?
Exactly.
I don't know where it came from. You just told me it, so we're all gonna believe it because
That's why I
you're
can't
a
watch
government. You're
television. I can't watch television because these basic baseless claims. It's like, look, we got to jump in employment from what? You'll have to be a little
precisely.
more
Give
concrete.
me documentation. Give me like an actual like
That's what I hate about.
representation.
That's what I hate about television news. They don't cite sources. They're
No,
just believe these claims I just made. Why?
exactly. Yeah,
And that's really
that's
bad in the case of the war on terror too. we caught these suspected terrorists. Well, if they're suspected, they're not proven. Let them go. You know,
Yeah, why are we taking like the recent
if
CIA
someone is
toward?
suspected, you don't have a serious case.
No,
Leave them
exactly.
be.
And you look at the apparent America morals and what we go by. We have Guantanamo Bay, which is outside the U.S., so doesn't fall under the
It's in
Constitution, which
Cuba.
doesn't matter. But um, you go by, they have a right to a fair trial. They have a right to a fair trial. If they're suspected terrorists, instead of waterboarding them for information, shouldn't you like actually find out if they know anything? Shouldn't you find out if they're actually guilty before they actually are?
What I found convenient about the whole raid in Abbottabad, you know, killing Bin Laden, the whole surprise, everybody's cheering, and I'm just like, great. You know, they supposedly took these documents and everything, but they didn't share them with the public. Gee, how convenient.
You know what's even funnier about that is here's a
Because,
couple things right here.
I mean,
So you have the SEAL Team 6 team that actually raided Bin Laden. They died in a plane crash, which the
yep,
plane was like is they didn't use it anymore. It was outdated. They would never ever put 20 members in there at all. They put maybe 3 or 4, but they put all of them in there at once.
maybe
That was
six.
kind of suspect. The next thing is that for Saddam Hussein's death, there's a video of the execution, which I watched. There's a
Mm-hmm.
video. Bin
Seen it.
Laden was given a seaside burial. Anyone who would have seen it is dead now.
Mm-hmm.
And you even look at the
How
fact that
convenient.
there are, and I mean, with a lot of these things, you have to go off of what you know and then go off of what makes sense. That's
Yep.
what you have to do because we don't get told the truth. Anything that is the truth is demonized or
Mm-hmm.
taken down from the internet. Um,
Censorship, yay!
yep, CISPA and whatever the other one's called.
They're
Um,
always coming up with something.
yeah, and you look at the fact that there's quite a few decent sources
Mm-hmm.
that say that Bin Laden was dead before 9/11 happened.
December 2001.
Yep, and you look at
I believe
the
actually I have that,
videos
something like that on my blog.
that happened with Bin Laden, and there's a 5-minute video on 9/11, and it's like really fast, just goes through everything, makes a joke out of all of it, which is awesome because it was all a joke, and it goes through how Bin Laden looked younger throughout the videos,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just like
Actually, what really bothers me is it was a video that happened on 9/11, but I've never been able to actually find it on the web. This guy was on the ground, you know, documenting the entire thing, right? He's a newscaster,
of
and
course.
they never saved the video. They never, you know, said, you know, this is dedicated to him. We're going to share it to the public. Why not? What did he say to make them censor that? You know, there's got to be something in there. I legitimately remember it from that day. So she's like, it's not like I'm just fabricating this video like it never happened. I'm sure a lot of people remember it.
Unless
It's
un,
just a video that has been stuck in my mind ever since 9/11. I'm just like, well, it's got to be around here. I mean, I got to know who this guy is and what happened. You know,
yeah,
there's got to
unfortunately
be
if
an answer.
it wasn't on Fox News, I wouldn't have seen it. I was this is from
No,
not
it's on all the
everything
other networks.
everything I heard from 9/11 was my dad watched Fox News, so I watched Fox News because it was the right thing to do. I was about 12 at the time,
Yeah,
and
you
I
can only
was
do so much.
running in and out from playing basketball to seeing what was going on, and that was what I saw. Anything that showed on Fox News, that's all I saw.
Mhm.
And actually, like I used to be I used to work for a moving company. I'd pack a lot of people's stuff, and every single house I ever packed, they had from the day after 9/11, they had all those newspapers saved,
Mhm.
and that's it's honestly, we're not going to go into conspiracy theories on this at least. Um, we're not. It's just really sad that people haven't realized the objective
Mhm.
and what was carried out from that.
Yep.
I don't know if you've ever heard of Aaron Russo, but he had an interview.
Yes.
There's a video of him where he talked about how I don't know if it was he was friends with one of the Rothschilds or Rockefellers or someone, and they're
Mhm.
and before it they're like, this is awesome. Um, we're gonna invade 7 different countries, and
Mhm.
it's all gonna be carried out on. It's all gonna be carried out under the false pretense of terror.
Yep.
And This is before it happened. It was a phone call between him and Rothschild and Rockefeller. I don't remember either. It's the same person pretty much if you really think about it.
Uh-huh.
Whatever one it was doesn't matter. And
They're all oligarchs to me.
yep. And I mean I'm not a big fan of Aaron Russo from what he did to the Constitution Party back in the 90s, but at the same time there is some good stuff that he's done. So either way. So we're about an hour 25 in. We've got a few more subjects on here. But an hour and 25-minute YouTube video is quite a long time.
Mhm.
I think this is probably a good time to conclude this video. Matt, do you have anything else to add before we conclude this? Plug your Tumblr again.
It is EndTheTerrorWar.tumblr.com.
And that will be in the links in the description. Do you have anything else you want to add? Tell the people, tell the viewers before we go.
Yes. I didn't create the phrase terror industrial complex as a joke. Just website satire. I wasn't saying it to laughingly laugh at the victims of terrorism or anything like that. I take it seriously. And I hope everyone else does too, because this is a war profiteering / depopulation scheme, and it seriously affects everybody in the world, Western, Eastern, Middle Eastern, wherever you are. And I just believe that the best way we can end the terror war is collectively and individually working together. We have to fight this systematic genocide against the whole planet. It's unacceptable. It must be protested against. It must be boycotted. Everything we can do. And I have no slight against Muslims, Christians, or anyone else, even though I am myself an unbeliever. So, I guess you could say in a word, I am a Jeffersonian atheist. I believe freedom of religion and also freedom to criticize religion, if that makes sense. So, I'd like to end on that note.
That is a very good way to end it. It's a very good way to end it. I will always die for anyone to worship at whatever altar they wish to believe in.
Absolutely.
That's something I stand strongly. I'm an unbeliever as well, but I also am against any persecution, any demonization against any particular belief. I believe anyone should have the power, have the freedom to worship at whatever altar they wish to worship at. So,
Exactly.
Matt, I definitely I am honored. I was honored to have you on this interview today.
Thank you.
You brought a lot of stuff on here that I don't think anyone else could have brought on here. You're definitely an expert at what you research, and I thank you for coming on Liberty Under Attack.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
I will gladly come on anytime you like.
I appreciate that, and we'll definitely have you on again. We haven't covered a few of these things, and we can probably cover another hour in these. So, I will definitely have you on again.
All right.
But for anyone else listening, I appreciate you guys listening to the first LUA interview. It's only getting better from here on out. There's nowhere to go but up. The next interviewee will be Ralph Epperson. If you don't know about Ralph, he's done about 52 years of research, and that it'll probably be about 2 hours. That interview will be about 2 hours, and I will not talk at all, honestly, which is definitely okay. The point of LUA interviews is to bring other viewpoints and other expertises on, because I can't research everything myself. I try, but it's impossible.
And there's so much good stuff.
It's all good stuff. Which is one thing that I've had trouble with is I always, it's like weekly. I change interests, and I research everything about the same every single week. So it's I've got about
I've done no different. I've been focused
average...
on voting for like 3 weeks straight on my blog. So, it's okay though, but I still focus on the war on terror. So fair balance.
Definitely. I mean that's how it is. Seems like everything I research is aligned with everything I've been researching before. So
Yep.
that's the biggest battle and the
There's a
hardest thing to
holistic
overcome.
connection between everything.
There's definitely a connection, and it's definitely no coincidence, especially if you look back thousands of years. And
um,
for this next,
Shane,
yep, go ahead.
before we go, I would just like to say I don't mind us interviewing next time. If you'd like us to go into conspiracy theories, I don't mind discussing that either next time. So,
Okay, all right. Well, we will definitely talk before that next interview, and
all right.
because I definitely would like to go into some of that stuff as well. But this one was more so based off of your expertise on the terror war, so to speak.
Absolutely.
So it was definitely a very powerful and lots of information passed along, which is the goal of this. So I again I want to say I appreciate you for coming on here and devoting an hour and a half of your life. I definitely appreciate that.
Thank you
It's
for having
not
me.
there's not a lot of people that would do that, so I definitely appreciate it, and it's definitely no problem at all. Anytime you want to come on here, you just let me know, and we'll get one set up.
Will do.
So,
Thank you, Shane.
no problem. So again, Ralph Epperson will be the next guest. He's had a lot of years of research, and this one will be more based off of secret societies, and also he will run through um, various administrations and just show you the corruption and what has taken place and why it has happened. So I want to thank you guys again. It's libertyunderattack.com, and also look below for the gallery link. Get yourself some one of a kind shirts. That is all I have today, Matt. I want to thank you again, and thank you guys for
You're
watching if you're
welcome.
still here. And I will talk to you guys next time.
Take care,
Hope you
Shane.
guys you too, man. Hope you guys all have a great evening, a great morning, whenever you're watching this. You
See
guys,
ya.
see ya, guys.